singing you just heard is that of my guest today, baritone Joe Lodato. Welcome, everyone. My name is Nadine Herman, and I'm the music director of the Newark School of the Arts. Joining me today is also Dr. Patricio Molina, who is the director of the conservatory at the Newark School of the Arts. Our special guest today is baritone Joe Lodato, and I know many of you know him, but just in case you don't, let me tell you something about our special guest today. Baritone Joe Lodato has established himself as a major force on the international, opera, recital, and concert stages. Upcoming, Mr. Lodato sings Marullo and covers the title role in a production of Verdi's Rigoletto with Bohème Opera. Recently, Joe Lodato sang Renato in the Masked Ball and was baritone soloist in the Seven Last Words of Christ and the Fauré Requiem, all in the tri-state area. Joe Lodato has trained with the Metropolitan Opera, Sarasota Opera, and the Aspen Music Festival. He has also been awarded prizes by the Metropolitan Opera National Council, LA Opera, Florida Grant Opera, and the Aspen Institute. He has also appeared with Tony Award-winning performer Betty Buckley. A champion of modern music, Joe has sung the works of such composers as John Musto, Ben Moore, Jake Hagee, and Ricky Ian Gordon. Joe was also my student when he was 10 years old at the Newark School of the Arts. This is the first time I'm seeing Joe in many, many years. So Joe, welcome. I'm so glad to see you today. And you know, when I first met you, I had just graduated Juilliard with my master's. I was embarking on my own career as a professional singer and teacher. And there I was at the Newark School of the Arts. And I can recall my little room that I had chosen on the third floor because it had a Hamburg Steinway. And there you were with this incredibly beautiful soprano voice. And I was so nervous because, you know, I really wanted to do this right. So anyway, Joe, welcome. And maybe you can tell us something about your musical education after the Newark School of the Arts.
So it really did start in that little room up the stairs on the right-hand side. I remember it like it was yesterday. I remember every Saturday coming in and being so nervous because I was so young and just didn't know what I was doing. And I remember just feeling so welcomed and so at ease and being allowed to make mistakes and to learn and to listen and to, I guess now I know we were learning together, which I think is so important even to this day. From the Newark Community School of the Arts, I went on to studying with Jerome Hines while he was running OMTI. But again, as a special project, it was just something that he did out of his own, I guess, admiration for me and goodwill. Because I was too young to be in the Young Artist program, he took it upon himself to give me the benefit of his mastery and his knowledge. He set up my college auditions because at that point I didn't even know that you could major in voice.
Wow.
So I had every intention of going to school for business until someone at church heard me and said, "This kid has something special and should really be studying voice." And I was like, "What? I mean, go to school for that?"
You know, it's interesting. You know, the Newark School of the Arts, we were the administrator for OMTI.
Yeah.
Because, as you know, they didn't have a real school.
Correct.
So our school director at the time, Bill Reeder, who had a major career singing, knew Jerome Hines. And so we were able to do a lot. We had the rehearsals and all the practice rooms were with you guys. I mean, I'm really upset I never knew you were there.
Yeah.
Also, if you remember, Franco Corelli was the other person involved with that.
Yep.
And it was a day to behold, the day he walked into the Newark School of the Arts. I nearly passed out.
Yeah.
So, you know, our lives were even connected at that point through the school.
So then he had set up an audition for me for Westminster Choir College. I auditioned. I got a substantial scholarship, full tuition, went there for 2 years, and it just wasn't. It was an amazing experience. I mean, the exposure to singing these major works with major orchestras, with major conductors, in major houses, Carnegie Hall. I mean, it's something that most professionals don't get to experience, let alone an undergraduate. Um, but it was such a small community and such a tight knit conservatory feel. I really needed something. I wanted something bigger. And my best friend at the time was studying meteorology at the University of Miami. And I had gone down for spring break. And my mom, knowing that I wasn't really happy in Princeton,
Hmm.
said, you should take a look at University of Miami. I hear they have a good music school.
Yes.
And I went in and I audited a couple classes and I sang for one of the teachers there, Dr. Lorene Buffington Summers, who's passed away,
Mm.
who became my teacher when I went there. Um, I was offered admittance to University of Miami, and it was where I found my voice. It's where I found my home, my second home, and my second family. Dr. Lorene Buffington Summers, who was my voice teacher, but also my second mother away from home. I had left my family, was all in New Jersey. I was in Florida, halfway across the country, away from everyone, and it was a harrowing experience. I didn't know myself yet. I hadn't come out. I hadn't really experienced much of life, and
Wow.
really shepherded not just my voice but my life. Her and her husband got me a job at their church and would pick me up on Sundays and drive me back and forth to the church job. Her daughter Leah, who's now an administrator with Naples Opera, became like a sister to me, and I studied with them in Miami. And then they also had a summer program in Salzburg with the Salzburg College. Um, and with that, you got to experience opera at the highest level every night with the Salzburg Festival.
Oh my God, I can only imagine.
Yeah, and perform in concert series with the Salzburg Festival and have master classes with Jerry Hadley, God rest his soul, and Thomas Hampson and Angela Denoke and Helen Donat and all of these really just amazing artists that I had only experienced via records prior to that. So it was a really just wonderful experience. It took me a while to find my footing in university setting, but when I did, it was because I had the support of a really, really wonderful, structured support system in that teacher, coach, family vibe, which I think is most important for kids to know. I don't think it's important that everyone graduates from Juilliard or NEC or Curtis or AVA or Manhattan School of Music. I think it's important that you find a teacher that really speaks to you, that you understand, and that understands you. That's what worked for me at least.
Joe, very nice meeting you. Thank you
Nice
for
to meet
doing
you
this
too.
interview. There's a lot of things about your life and your career that I see a relationship of my upbringing as well. I also went to a Newark School of the Arts. That's where I started. And I went to the conservatory, finding my way. So, but looking back at the Newark School of the Arts, firstly, I know that Nadine Herman has a phenomenal studio of students,
Thank
and
you.
I'm just curious,
Oh,
coming from you, how is it like working with Nadine?
oh my goodness.
That's one question. And
Well,
number two is, what do you remember best about the Newark School of the Arts?
so I remember walking into the Newark Community School of the Arts and being very nervous because it was, my first experience with having a lesson of any sort.
Wow.
I was just a natural, sort of talented kid that sang in church, and that was it. I remember I think 9 when I auditioned, maybe not. I
Yeah.
think I just turned 9 when I auditioned. And when I auditioned, It was Nadine. It was another voice teacher who had a studio catty corner to yours, and someone else from the program. And I remember you guys telling my parents before I even opened my mouth, um, he's quite young, and we usually don't take students before their voices change.
Correct.
But we'll listen to him. And then after I sang for you guys, I remember you came out into the hallway, Nadine, and you spoke to my parents and you said, "We normally don't do this, but I would really love to have him in my studio."
Yes.
And that's where
Very.
it started.
Yeah.
And then I would come every Saturday, and it was the highlight of my week.
Oh,
Most of my friends did not know what I was doing because
mhm.
I was kind of like, growing up in Newark, it's like, oh, you're going to sing opera? What?
Exactly. What?
Um, so I would like sneak off on Saturdays for my lessons, but it was literally, I can remember the red bag that I had that said Newark Community School of the Arts. I remember this, my 24 Italian songs and arias, and my mom had gone to a sheet music store and bought a bunch of sheet music, just like collection art, like books. And one of the first songs we ever sang, and I don't remember if you remember this, was Chicago, You're the Meaning of My Life. Because I knew the song because it was my uncle's wedding song. So we just sang through it in the lesson. And then the first piece of classical music that you ever assigned me was Purcell's Music for a While.
Exactamo.
And about 20 years later, I had a full circle moment. It was the first piece I had ever performed professionally as a countertenor.
Wow.
So I spent a couple of years as a countertenor, and it was the first piece that was given to me on a recital. Said, "I want you to sing this on this recital that we're doing." And it was in Greenwich Music Festival, and I was
Mhm.
like, "Whoa, that's a
Well, and a beautiful song to sing.
yeah,
Beautiful, no matter what age you learned it, learn it, and also, it's a great piece of music, and it's something that stays with you, and a wonderful thing to have in your repertoire.
yeah." But
One of the questions I wanted to ask you,
one
yeah.
of the things, but one of the things I wanted to say and I wanted to point out was that I always felt so comfortable, and I always felt okay to make the mistake, to learn something new, to be myself, to just be in your studio. And it was just it was the highlight of my week to spend that hour in that room and to just sing and make music and to feel important in a different way. To know that there was something of substance that was in me that people were recognizing. And so for a little kid who, you know, didn't know much, it was really important, and it's really something that I look back on with really great memories and really gratitude.
Thank you so much for that, Joe. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Um, the other thing I wanted to ask you, and that is about singing competitions. I noticed that you've done several of them. I mean, it's a mixed bag. Do you recommend doing competitions, and which ones do you prefer? And maybe you could say something about the Metropolitan National
Yeah.
Opera.
So competitions, like you said, are a mixed bag. I think you have to remember that while you don't have to be Pavarotti, you have to be your best.
Hmm.
Because a lot of things come from competitions that you don't think do. A lot of companies are listening, a lot of agents are listening, and a lot of other competitions are also there listening as well. And when you get into the advanced levels of competitions, when you're talking about the Metropolitan Opera National Council auditions, and you're talking about Gerda Listner and the use of the Liedenkrantz and all these big competitions with the big prize money, you'll notice that a lot of the same people win every year. The same people will win the competitions for that year.
Hmm.
And I don't think that's necessarily just haphazard. I think it's a lot of the same panels. It's a lot of the same people adjudicating. It's a lot of the same. um, board members X, Y, and Z. So there's a certain amount of politicization that goes
Yeah.
on in competition world.
Mhm.
But there's a lot of good that you can learn too. It's a great way to learn how to audition.
Yes.
A great way to get your feet wet, to try out new material, to try out new arias. I just don't want people to put a bunch of weight behind it because a lot of us didn't win the Met competition, but from reaching the semifinals, you can also become a special project like I was, where they pay for your lessons and they pay for your coachings, and you're coaching with the artistic administration of the Metropolitan Opera. So it's not always the be all end all about winning. It's about what you get from the experience.
Mhm.
And I think that meant a lot to me was learning that it's not always about winning first prize, second prize. It's about going in, putting yourself out there, knowing that what you're giving is your best on that given day, because that changes from Monday to Wednesday, as we all know.
Yes.
Voice is very fickle. We can wake up today and it's working perfectly, and then tomorrow we wake up and nothing works. Um, so I think there's a lot to be said for just knowing yourself, and also being ready. You also don't want to go out and do the Met competition if you're not ready for that level.
Absolutely.
I think young kids start at Nats. Nats was a great experience for me. It was the
Yes.
first competition I did. It was the first competition that I won, and I had no idea. I was like sitting there in the audience, and I was like, "Oh God, they didn't call this one, they didn't call that one." And then I was like, "I should just get my stuff and go home." And then they called me, and I was like, "Oh, oh wow, that's cool." Um, but it's a great. I think it's a great place to start for young singers. I know
Mhm.
Classical Singer magazine has a
Yes.
younger. Um, what I like to see now, and I don't remember and I don't recall that this was the case when I was younger, is that they have so many different levels now,
Yes.
where
Right.
there are high school, college,
Mhm.
emerging professional, and then beyond. Um, I just think you have to, as a student and as a singer, you have to have people that you trust around you. You have to have, whether it's an agent or a teacher or coach, people that their ears become your ears. Because
Right.
as singers, we never really truly hear what everyone else does. It's the one thing that we can never really experience is our own voice in the hall. Um, so you have to have that those trusted advisors around you. And if your teachers and your coaches are saying, yes, you're ready, then yeah, go do it. But
Right.
if they're saying, meh, maybe they know better. Sometimes
Exactly.
you have to have people that you trust because it's it can't just be you internally driving this. You
Right.
are ultimately the person that needs to make the decisions about your career and your voice, but you need to have outside influences that you trust and that you admire that that help guide your career and say, meh, maybe this instead of this, or maybe go this way instead of that way. I spent the majority of my young adult life studying to be a very Verdi baritone.
Right.
And I was down in Sarasota doing a young artist program, and a friend of mine heard me singing along with Lakme and
Mhm.
singing the bell aria and singing the high D's and all of this, and was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Well,
Uh,
it's something I do for fun." And when I got back to my coaches at the Met, they said, "Oh, I heard you were having some fun, and we'd like to hear it."
oh wow.
And so I sang countertenor for them, and one of the administrators said, "I want you to switch tomorrow."
Wow.
And so then so I had won the regionals as a baritone
I was,
night,
mhm.
switched, and the next following year won the regionals as a countertenor.
Joe, unbelievable.
Yeah. So, but I just didn't. And again, it was listening to outside voices saying, you should try this. And I tried it, but it didn't speak to me.
There you
And
go.
ultimately, I'm the one that it has to affect.
That's
I'm
right.
the one that has to live with this for the rest of my life. And so I said, while I'm, you know, apparently being successful at this, it's not doing anything for me as an artist. I didn't love the rep. It didn't speak to me, and the
Yeah.
Verdi rep really does.
Mhm.
So I switched back.
The other thing I wanted to ask you, just to take a little diversion from the
Yeah.
singing, and that is, how did you start to be involved in fashion? And do you think it's important today for people to have Plan B?
So, okay, part one. How did I get involved in fashion?
Yes.
I came home from a gig. I came home from Aspen, and it was a friend's birthday coming up. And I said, "What do you want for your birthday?" And she said, "I want you to get a job at Louis Vuitton because I want a discount."
There you go.
And that's how I started in fashion. I loved the brand, and I just had a ton of brand knowledge, and I had a knack for it. I had a knack for styling and for visual merchandising, and I loved it. It was great. It was great money, and as we know as young artists, that's something that we never find is great
Yeah.
money as a young artist. Um, so I kept this career sort of bubbling on the underneath all along. And when I didn't have gigs, I would go back to fashion. And I lost a very dear friend. Her younger brother was killed. He was a police officer in Newark about 9 years ago. And I really wanted, and it was at the same time that my contract as a special project at the Met was ending.
Mhm.
And I was in the finals for the Domingo Caffert's Young Artist Program in LA, and I didn't get that. And I was turning 30, I think, and I'd seen a lot of my friends moving on to the next level of their lives,
I
buying
see.
homes, settling down, and I just really wanted to be home. And so I went back into fashion, and it took off like gangbusters. And
Wow.
I moved up the ranks very quickly. And I took an 8 year hiatus from singing and built this career in fashion where when I left, I was the vice president of a very prominent luxury jewelry, global luxury jewelry line.
Hmm. Hmm.
But again, it wasn't feeding my soul. I was
Yes,
making more money than I had ever thought I'd make in my life, but I was empty. I was happy on Fridays and miserable by Sunday night
I
because I knew it
understand.
was not
Hmm.
what I was supposed to be doing. And I was out with a friend who's a social worker. And I said to her, I said, "Oh, God, it's got to be so tough doing what you do." And she said, "Well, it is. And I know that not everyone could do this. And I was put here to do this. This is why God put me here." And it was like someone kicked me in the stomach. And I said to myself that day, I said, this is not what you're supposed to be doing. You're supposed to be singing. And you know that. And I went home and I thought about it for the weekend and I decided that was going to be it. And so I went to a coach of mine that I had worked with in Miami 20 years prior and said, "I need a come to Jesus coaching."
Oh my goodness.
And I need to know if this is still a viable option.
Wow.
And so I took all my old rep out and I went and I met her at her apartment in the city and I started singing and her partner who was in the next room came out and goes, "I'm sorry, who are you?" And I said,
Hmm.
"Oh, I'm Joe Lodato." Nice to meet you. He's like, "Why have I never heard of you before? Your voice is just amazing. It's ridiculous." And so my old coach goes, "Well, I guess it's still doable."
Wow.
And
That's,
so we started working the rep and um 3 years later, here we are.
wow.
2.5 years later, here we are, and I'm back in the mix, um, and that was that part of the journey. Now,
Wow, what a story.
thank you. So whether or not people should have a plan B,
Hmm.
um, I think you can, but I think you really have to follow your heart and follow your soul, and I think that will tell you what your plan is supposed to be.
Hmm.
And not that there needs to be a plan A or a plan B, but I just think that you need to be logical about what people are telling you. Again, listening to the people that you trust. And if they're telling you that you should be singing at the Met, then you should follow that.
Mhm.
You know, if they're in that sphere, if you're coaching with people at the Met and the people at the Met are telling you you should be singing here, then you should probably be singing there. If you're coaching with people in, I don't know, a tiny little regional house and they're like you should sing in the chorus here, then maybe you should be
Yeah,
thinking about where that leaves you. Now, you can have a wonderful life singing regionally and singing in choruses. People sing in the Metropolitan Opera Chorus and make more money than doctors. I mean,
correct.
you know, there are a lot of ways to be involved in the arts without necessarily being on stage.
Mhm.
And I think you can find your own niche. It's not for everyone. Like I said, the travel is horrific. Well, used to be when you could travel.
Good travel, yeah.
It's a lot of lonely times. It's a lot of time away from your family and your friends and loved ones. You miss things, you miss holidays, you miss birthdays. But it's something that feeds your soul that you can't, there's nothing else like stepping out on stage, and there's nothing like the creative process of being in a room with an orchestra and 30 colleagues and making art and
That's right.
birthing it, and then
Mhm.
the the absolute sort of pain that you feel when that process is over and it's done. And
Mhm.
there's nothing like it. There's really nothing like it.
Nothing like it. And a lot of my students ask me about the career, and I tell everyone the same thing is that you have to wake up every single day of your life
Yeah.
thinking of music, your voice, and the love of it every moment.
Yeah.
If you start to think about something else, then you know what? You shouldn't do this.
Yeah. It
And
really has to
it,
be.
it, it's from the time I was a baby, and I come from a musical family,
Mhm.
my entire life to this day, what am I going to learn? What am I going to sing? When am I going to vocalize?
Mhm.
What should I look at today? I think about music
Yeah.
almost every moment of my life.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that kind of love for
Yeah.
something like this, don't do it.
It has to be a love, and it has to be something that you're willing to sacrifice for, because there are a lot
Right,
of sacrifices that come along with it.
right,
Uh,
right.
there are a lot of times when friends are going out to dinner or going out to a party or something, and you have an audition the next day or you have a gig the
There you
next day, and it's like, oh God, I really want to go, but I have to sing 27 high G's at 8 o'clock in the morning. So,
right. And do your friends understand? Most of the time, no.
yeah, I mean,
Right?
they do now. I mean, in the
Uh-huh.
beginning, it's like, come on, bro, you can't come out, nah. And I'm like, nah, I can't. And there were times where I was like, yeah, you know what, I am going out, and I
And
didn't get the job.
the sacrifices that the singers do are even more, because the voice is so fragile. What you eat, you know, putting a scarf for the cold, it's
I
very
have
tough.
I have to say, I am not the best when it comes to being the proper singer.
Mhm.
Um,
But Joe,
I'm
you,
not.
by the way,
I never have been, and thank God, I've been blessed with sort of cords of steel that
One,
take
but
a look.
I have to
Take
say,
it.
Joe, your story of taking 7 years off and coming back, sacrificing a great salary, and just to follow your dream, and in the 7 years losing all of your networking, because that's very important in the music business, and starting all over again and succeeding. It shows the passion and the energy that you have
Well,
for the business.
thank you. I mean, it's something that I never really lost touch with. I mean, my friends that I've made. I mean, when you go through opera boot camp with people, you just don't. Yeah, I mean, you're forged for life. These friendships are forged for life. I mean, we've gone through the thick and thin. Um, but I had some very good, very strong connections. Karen Levine at the Met, Josh Winograde at LA Opera, who we kind of grew up in the business. The three of us kind of grew up in the business together. We were all young singers. Karen was at Lindemann while I was a special project. Josh was a singer that were around the same age, and he's now the administrator at LA Opera. And so when I came back into this, those were the people that I reached out to. These were people that I had trusted, that knew me, knew my talent, knew what I was capable of, and were willing to take a chance and say, "Yeah, sure, come on, let's see how this works." That's another big thing I think for singers is it's not burning bridges, but also being a genuine person. I am myself. I don't put on
So,
any artifice. I don't, gild the lily. I'm myself. It took me 26 years to find myself and to come out and to be who I am and to be strong in that skin. And when I came back, I think I was even a better artist for it because I know who I am. I know what I have to give, and I'm unapologetic with it.
there you
When I
go.
get up to sing, you're getting a piece of me. You're not getting what I think you want to hear.
Hmm.
You're getting what I have to offer. And you may like that, and you may not. And that's a chance that I take.
And audiences who see this, they see the
Right.
genuine
Yeah. But
performance.
that's what I think most people want. And I think that's the biggest. I think, when I talk to young singers and when I talk to teachers and coaches, I want to be a genuine and authentic artist. I want there to be a message behind what I'm saying and what I'm delivering to an audience that means something more than just me making a beautiful sound.
Exactly.
And I think that's a lot of what we lose today. I think if you
Mhm.
listen to Callas, not everything was beautiful. A lot of it was kind of ugly in certain ways, but it was that character there was intent behind it. There was a magic that sort of grabbed you because it was genuine and it was organic and it was her.
Yes.
It
But
wasn't a portrayal and it wasn't a sort of washed down version of anything. She left it all on the
she
stage.
left it all on the stage.
Yeah.
So right now, where do you see yourself? Like what we're all locked in this kind of
Mhm.
pause, as they like to
Yeah.
say. So where do you see you yourself going? What is your next career move? That's the question I want to ask.
So the next move, I mean, the immediate is I'm planning. So like I said, I want my career to be of purpose. And I don't want that just to be the only purpose to be make money and make myself notoriety and fame and X, Y, and Z. Right now, I'm planning a recital series with a producing partner, and hopefully this comes to be, which will be sort of like a national recital series called Amplify and Expose. And it will feature myself and artists that are underrepresented
Oh, great.
from different communities,
Mm-hmm.
specifically women, artists of color, Asian descent. It's people that don't necessarily always see themselves on the operatic stage or the recital stage. And
Mm-hmm.
I want it to be in communities that are underexposed. Um, because I think the more that we show young kids that this is a possibility, that people that look like them are doing this in a significant way, that's how we change the diversity in our industry
Yes.
in a meaningful way for generations to come. So that's the first project that we're working on that will go from Newark and hopefully will include the Newark Community School of the Arts.
Beautiful. That would be beyond wonderful. And
And we'll do,
Joe, we happen to have a really beautiful concert hall now. It's a gem
yeah,
with a world-class Steinway with phenomenal sound for singers and string instruments.
well, we'll be talking about that after we get off the air then. So we'll do that from probably, so we're looking at Newark, New York area, Miami, LA, Louisiana, and possibly Chicago to start. So that's a pretty big undertaking. But also, I have a Rigoletto on the books that's being, whenever things open. a Bohème on the books, another Rigoletto on the books that we're hoping, happens and we'll see. But auditioning again, auditioning, singing for whomever, coaching with, staff at La Scala, staff at the Met, and just trying to get back out there and trying to do things in a way that is meaningful. I didn't come back to this just to make money. I could have stayed right where I was and made a lot more money and a lot quicker. I came back to this because it's what I think I'm supposed to be doing, and I think I can use my talents and my artistry to make a difference and make an impact, the way that others have done that for me.
Yes.
I'm the kid from Newark. We weren't exactly exposed to opera every day. We didn't have an opera company running around like in our backyards. But the exposure that I got from the Newark Community School of the Arts and from my parents listening to Pavarotti in the car, it planted a seed. And my pastor, this is just one story that really just impacted me. My pastor had grown up with Diana Soviero.
Oh, wow.
And the first time, and when they heard me sing, they were like, this is something special. This kid's got something. And he arranged for me to meet Diana after a performance at the Met. And she had just sang Musetta. And she brought me backstage. And she said, listen, kid, if I can make it here, so can you.
Mm-hmm.
And it stuck with me because you don't necessarily feel like you belong. You walk into certain rooms and they're joking in French, or they're saying a phrase from an opera that you've never heard before, and you feel like an outsider. You feel like you don't belong. You feel like you're less than, and your talent may be greater than theirs, but it's your own perception of
Yeah.
who you are and what where you're meant to be. And sometimes you don't feel like you belong because you've just not seen it. And I think the more that we can show kids that this is a viable option for them and that it's a viable life and it is a thriving art form, that can take you across the globe. I mean, I was the kid from Newark that didn't come from exorbitant means that got to live in Europe for summer after summer after summer and see some of the greatest cities and live in
Yeah.
Aspen for a summer and
The best.
Sarasota and LA and stay at all these beautiful places. And I lived on Malibu next door to Sting for a couple months because I was doing I mean, literally living in Malibu. Here's this kid from Newark living in Malibu Colony next to Sting and Jennifer Aniston. I mean, it's a wonderful world that can take you on these adventures that otherwise would not be available to most people.
Joe, thank you so much for being with us today. It was so great to hear your stories about your life and very moving for me to see the wonderful singer you have become. I hope that we can all do something together again. And please stay safe and wish you the best of luck on all of your endeavors in your career. So thank you and bye.
Scorda